Hello everybody, welcome back to Photorec.tv. I'm Toby and I just got back from leading a week-long workshop in the Yellowstone National Park area, which in the wintertime is just awesome. I had with me the Canon 100-400 5.6-8 US-IS RF lens. That's not the right order, but you get it. I mostly use this full-frame lens attached to a crop sensor body, the Canon R10, where it becomes a 150-600mm lens. I was curious how well it would do. I was also curious how well it would compare against the much more expensive 100-500, and I happen to have the 1.4 extender along with me. I was actually shocked to learn that this budget-friendly 100-400 has a serious advantage over the 100-500 when using with extenders. We'll get to that in a moment, but first let's get right into the review of this, and you can hit that like button if you appreciate no wasted time. Physically, this is a very lightweight lens. It weighs in at just 1.4 pounds or 635 grams. That's about the same size as an Arizona iced tea. The build is mostly plasticky construction. I mean, that's one of the ways that they save weight, but it doesn't feel cheap in the hand. The fit and finish is good. You've got your control ring out front, followed by a nice focus ring that feels great, and a nice meaty zoom ring, which you twist about a third of the way around to go from 100 to 400, and it is a telescoping zoom or external telescoping zoom design. You've got a small lock switch on the side that can be used to lock the lens at 100mm and only 100mm, so unlike some other lenses that offer locking abilities at other focal lengths, nope. And on this side, you've got an IS on or off switch and your AF/MF switch. So when you look at the 100-500, you don't have the IS mode switches that lens offers or the focus limiters, so none of that's available to you on this more budget-friendly model. You're also lacking a tripod mounting collar, which honestly on a lens this small and compact doesn't really bother me too much, but they can be nice for balance on gimbals, either for video setup or for wildlife. And there are some third-party options out there that you could consider. You also don't get a lens hood included. Now, Canon sells a compatible model for $50. There are some more affordable third-party options that you can pick up for a lot less, and that's what I'm going to recommend. Don't reward Canon's behavior here. Plus, their model's out of stock. Now, one important note, this lens is not weather sealed. So, you're going to need to be careful in wet or dusty environments, especially with this telescoping external zoom feature. That could easily bring in some moisture or dust into the system. The lens uses 67mm filters, and a reminder that my favorite filter system is the Maven magnetic system. I've got a link to more about that right down below. The closest this lens will focus is 2.89 feet or 0.88 meters, and that actually comes in at 200mm. Now, I mentioned the plasticky build being one of the ways that Canon keeps this lens lighter and cheaper. The other way they keep it lighter, cheaper, smaller is by limiting the aperture. This is an f/5.6 to f/8 lens. And it's important to note that you get that f/5.6 for just 13-ish millimeters. That's right, at 113, your max aperture changes from 5.6 to 6.3. At 156, your aperture changes to 7.1. And at 259 is where you see that switch to f/8. And of course, it stays there all the way out to 400mm. When we compare that to the Canon RF 100-500, well, that lens starts at f/4.5. And your max aperture at 500 is just 7.1. So not only do you get more zoom, but you get faster apertures across those zooms. But that Canon RF 100-500 is 4 times the price. Yeah, 4 times the price, and at least twice the weight. Now, slower apertures on a telephoto lens can feel limiting at times, slow light wildlife mornings, because you're going to already be at higher shutter speeds, either because of the subjects you're photographing, maybe like birds in flight, or just to counteract camera movement. 2 things that help me accept this lens being a bit slower. Well, it offers 5.5 stops of image stabilization that I found to be very good. And it's an RF lens, which means you're going to be using it on a modern mirrorless camera, which can really handle high ISOs quite well. Don't be scared to push it up into that 1600, 3200, and even above, especially if you invest a little bit of money in a third-party denoise program. Run these images through that, and you can get great results with this little bit of a slower lens. Let's talk about image quality. In short, it's very good. Look at these comparisons against the much more expensive 100 to 500. I'm really impressed. Can you even really clearly tell a difference? Even at 100%, they are very similar. Now, I did not spend much time looking in the corners. As I said, I tested this mostly on a crop sensor body, which means it's not a real stress test for the corners of a full frame lens. Plus, with wildlife, how often do you really need sharp corners? But I did a quick testing on a full frame camera, and a little more research leads me to believe the corners are not super sharp. Not dramatically different, but in a way that you can tell, yeah, that's the corner. As soon as you stop down a little from max apertures, they start to clean up and get a little sharper. Now, as I mentioned in the opening, I tested this with the Canon RF 1.4. With the 1.4 attached, this lens becomes a 140 to 560 f8 to f11 lens on a full frame camera. So yes, the slow lens becomes a bit slower, but I was impressed. Autofocus speeds, image quality remained very good. And that advantage over the 100 to 500? Well, when you mount this extender on a 100 to 500, it'll no longer zoom below 300. Physically, the lens becomes a different size. It's not a huge deal, but if you have a carefully packed camera bag and space for the 100 to 500 compacted, and suddenly it is too large to fit in that space because you have the extender on it, well, that's kind of annoying to take it off every time. This is an interesting choice on Canon's part, which is a nice way to say really crummy, in my opinion. This much cheaper 100 to 400 is still able to zoom in and out over its full range, which means when you add the extender, it only becomes that much longer. Overall, I am impressed with this lens. For its price, it is an excellent value. Once again, I show you a few photos where it really holds its own. And that's against something 4 times the price. If you're on a budget and looking for a good telephoto for one of Canon's RF mirrorless, full frame, or crop, and that's the thing, it's such a nice lightweight lens that it balances well on these smaller crop bodies, then this is your best choice as of spring 2023. Yeah, I wish it came with a lens hood, maybe a tripod collar, and weather sealing would be nice, but I am happy to have this lightweight of a lens with this much reach in my bag, and of course, I can throw on one of those little rain covers to add some protection in a pinch. I'd love to know what you think, or if you have any questions that I can answer, you just leave those as a comment right down below. And if you could take a moment to like this video, that would be wonderful. If you're not a subscriber, that's a nice thing to do too, along with pressing the little bell so you'll be futified. You'll be notified of future videos. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, and check the links below because there's a lot of good information down there. Don't forget.